All right, Justin, thanks so much for doing this. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me on. You're one of my favorite followers on X, man. So I'm happy to be here today.
I love that. I love that. Well, you played a bunch of years, I think 11 years in the NFL. So you have a unique perspective on everything that I talk about from a player's perspective for sure. So I'd love to run through just a few of those topics and then we can chat more about kind of what you're up to today. But first, I need to know, like, drafted in the first round, what's that like? Like, going from school, the pre-draft process, and then like having your dream come true. It feels on TV when we see it that it's a whirlwind 24 hours of like hop on the PJ, go to the facility, meet everyone. But you were in New York, so I'm sure it was a little bit different. Just talk me through kind of what happened there.
Yeah, it really was a whirlwind for me because I went to Syracuse University. I got them over my shoulder. I always got to represent the Block S. 4-1 right now. They're looking great. So just got to give a shout out to the alma mater. I went to Syracuse University when they were the worst team in college football. We were starting, I don't know if you remember this name, Greg Paulus,
Yeah.
former Duke Blue
Basketball
Devil.
player. Yeah.
You think of him for basketball. He
Yeah.
was my starting quarterback my freshman year at Syracuse. Signs all over the place says the devil wears orange now. And it was like an ode to Greg Paulus, who was probably one of the best athletes to ever come out of that Syracuse region. I go there. We're terrible. I'm a two-star recruit. Syracuse was my only offer, Division 1A. So I just go there for the sake of this is my only offer. I get to play some big-time schools, get to be around, some marquee players, some great history, but I'm not going to be a starter at Syracuse University. I come from a high school where we run triple option. Like, we don't pass the ball. I get to Syracuse. I end up starting, end up playing. And same thing throughout the draft process. And I give that background to give like why and why it was such an exciting time to get drafted. Going into the draft process, I never thought I would go first round. We thought second round, maybe third round.
So how does that work though? You go to like an agent or someone and they tell you, hey, here's where we think you're going to get drafted, because I think you had a year of eligibility left, right? So you had to make a decision on where you thought you were going to get drafted and if it was worth leaving the school early.
Yeah, so my last year at Syracuse, I'm going against Chandler Jones, who ends up being a first-round pick, Bruce Irving, who was a first-round pick, and Nick Perry from USC, who was a first-round pick. And I had fared well against all those players. Chandler was my teammate, went against him every day. So I knew if Chandler Jones was a first-round draft pick, okay, I can compete in the NFL. Agents started reaching out to me and said, hey, we think you're a first three-day draft guy. And I submitted my paperwork to the NFL, and the scouts gave me a first 3-round grade. So I knew I wouldn't go out of the third round, or at least I hoped. And once I went through that process, I had a year of eligibility. I had redshirt in my freshman year, so I still had played a lot of football. There was nothing for me at this point in college football. There was no NIL at the time. I wasn't getting paid. Syracuse University never gave me a dime. Trust me. I know there's stories of like the Reggie Bushes of the world and what the SEC. I never got a thing from Syracuse University. We did everything by the book. I can promise you that. And that's part of the reason why I left to go to the NFL, to make real money. And I was not invited to the draft. It was the year that Geno Smith was also invited to the draft, but wasn't drafted, sat in the green room. So I was happy that didn't end up being my draft experience, even though Geno has been very successful since. I was at home with my family. My mom bought every hat from every team except for the Miami Dolphins and the Cleveland Browns. She couldn't find those two hats. So luckily those teams didn't draft me. There was a run on offensive linemen.
Was this back in the day? Were they sending cameras to houses at this point or no?
They were still sending cameras to houses.
Okay.
No camera came to my house.
Okay.
Luckily, a buddy of mine used to work at Bloomsburg University. It's a small Division II school in Pennsylvania. He worked with the athletic program. He had his camcorder, and he said, hey, can I bring this to your house and just film it for us internally? I said, sure. So the draft goes by. There's a run on offensive linemen, and by 19, there's no one left. And I think that by 18, there's no one left. The Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. I had visited Dallas, and it said in Jerry's World in Dallas Cowboy Stadium on the big Jumbotron, welcome to Cowboy Stadium, Jordan Pugh. And my name's Justin. So I knew the Cowboys weren't drafting me at that point. They end up trading the pick back and taking for Travis Frederick later on. The next pick's the New York Giants. They take me 19th overall. The first call was to my agent. Now, the first thing I said was how much. Like, I want to know how much money. And he's like, this guy made this last year with the Chicago Bears, who got selected 19th. And then he's like, the next call, I hung up. My friends dog pile on top of me. They went absolutely crazy. It's on YouTube. It's actually on YouTube. It was a surreal experience.
Yeah, so you get to the Giants. How quickly do you realize this is not like college football?
Very quickly. I'm going against Justin Tuck, OCU Manura, Jason Pierre-Paul. They had just won a Super Bowl 2 years prior. Tom Coughlin is the most respected coach in the NFL at the time, and he was a scary guy to play for. You did not want to disappoint him. You definitely didn't want to disappoint Eli Manning, who was the king of New York at the time. And I was thrown right into a starting role. I started day one, and my first game against the Dallas Cowboys on primetime Sunday Night Football, I look over and it's DeMarcus Ware. And that is my welcome to the NFL moment. And we proceed to have 6 turnovers in that game, and we lost at the very, very end. But that was really when it hit me, when I was around all these guys that I grew up idolizing and having on my Madden teams. Now I'm playing alongside of them, and I'm responsible for protecting Eli Manning. That is when it dawned on me that the importance of my job.
Do you have any good Tom Coughlin stories? Because I remember hearing one a while back when he retired. I forget who it was on the team. It might have been Tuck or someone like that. Basically posted and was like, as a captain, I tried to get to the facility so early. I got there at 6 a.m. Your car was there. I got there at 5 a.m. Your car was there. I got there at 4. Your car was there. I go to touch the hood. It's cold because you slept there the night before. Like, this guy was just a workhorse. Was that the feeling inside the facility as well?
He was the most intimidating coach I've ever played for. Maybe it was because he had the 2 Super Bowls at the time. But the way he carried himself in that facility was just the utmost respect that every player gave to him. And he earned that through hard work, through sleeping at the facility. We started out 0-6 my rookie year, and people were starting to call for Coach Coughlin's head. And every day he was the same exact person. And that's taught me very valuable life lessons. You wear the same socks every day. Not the same exact pair, but like we wear team issued gear every single day. You show up 5 minutes early to everything. You know more about your opponent than they know about themselves. You do things the right way all the time because that is a reflection of how you live your life. And if it wasn't for Tom Coughlin, I don't even like saying Tom Coughlin, Coach Coughlin, I wouldn't be the man that I am. I wouldn't be the father, the husband, all of those things. So I could only give a hats off to when we left that building, we were better for being around Coach Coughlin. And that is something that I think every man that's played for him would say first and foremost.
So I'm a Giants fan, so I'm allowed to say this, but you went through some shitty years, obviously, with the Giants. I mean, you talked about it. You came in after they had won the Super Bowl 2 years prior. And the last, it feels like a decade now as a fan, has been kind of off and on, right? There was some playoff years here and there and good moments, but certainly less good than great. And what's it like being a player in that environment, right? Especially in a city like New York, everyone talks about, the media is really difficult. The fans are difficult too. Yeah. And it's not like you guys don't want to win. I mean, every day you're going out there and you're competing for your job and your paycheck and for your family and things like that. What is it like in the building when there's just continuous, negative publicity piling up on you guys?
It's tough. I mean, I was a first round pick, so there was pressure on me like, hey, Justin, we drafted you to get back to the playoffs. We went 8-8 the year prior, and that was a catastrophic failure of a year. We've drafted you to get back to where we want to get to. So I felt that pressure tremendously. I felt that pressure to help Eli Manning finish his career the way he should have with playoff berths, with contention in the playoffs. And it wasn't in the cards. Like it was like they won the Super Bowl and then like drove off a cliff. Every offensive line that was a part of those historic runs was all gone after my rookie year. Every single one of them. There was no like easing one guy out, like Chris Nee, Dave Deal, Kevin Booth, David Boss. Every single one of them had like career-ending injuries in 2013, and they were all gone. And we had nobody to replace them. Then Eli's sitting back there. He's a sitting duck. Then we have a spark in Odell Beckham, and things start to trend in the right direction. And we have coaches that are getting fired. So it was when it rains, it pours. I tell people all the time, New York media is tough, good. Like I love that. That's what makes it so much better when you win games in New York City. You have the ability to change the trajectory of your life by playing for the New York Giants. I came back to the New York Giants last year when they were 1-4 because I knew what it would do for the rest of my career, having gone and played for the New York Giants and being a New York Giant for the rest of your life, having that tied with you, the ability for success and how much that amplifies you. So when anyone talks about New York City, this is the one piece of advice I will give you. Look the media square in the eyes. Look the fans square in their eyes. Tell them exactly what it is. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try to point the blame to somebody else. Either you're going to have a job or you're not. The fans you can't lie your way out of it. NFL is such a cover your ass business. Oh no, I'm not to blame. It was this guy, without actually throwing him under the bus. They let you know it was the coordinator or it was the quarterback. Own up to your shit. Talk to the fans, be real with them, and they will love you. And that's what I did last year. I didn't have great games at times. I looked at everybody right in the eye and said, hey, I didn't play well. I'm coming here to try to help the New York Giants get back to where they once were. And if you go with that mentality, it will serve you well in the long run.
Yeah, so you're a first-round pick. You play, a handful of years with the Giants. You become a free agent after, I think they extended your fifth-year option. So you play the fifth year, then you become a free agent. You had an injury coming off of. You decided to go to the Cardinals. Was that just a sense of like, the Giants don't want me anymore? Or was it, hey, I can go get the most amount of money with this team over here, so I'm going to go do it?
Yeah, Giants didn't even offer me a contract. So Dave Gettleman came in. He wanted a different style of offense. He wanted to get 330-pound offensive linemen. He wanted to draft Saquon Barkley. And this is when the business of football was first introduced to me. The Giants didn't even give me an offer. Dave Gettleman never even extended me a phone call. I was coming off injury because I switched positions 3 times in the season for the Giants. If we were playing Von Miller, I was playing right tackle. If we were playing Aaron Donald, I was playing left guard. It was like Pee-wee football shit that I was doing for the team. And I was told by Jerry Reese and Ben McAdoo, like, hey, we're going to get your deal done. You're our best offensive lineman. You're the most versatile guy we have. We're going to get your deal done. And when everyone gets fired, all promises are gone, as you know, in anything in life. And they end up moving on. And I'm like, all right, now it's time to go to the highest bidder. This is business. I'm a mercenary at this point. And went to Arizona. I didn't want to go to Arizona. I wanted to stay in New York and be a Giant for life. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I loved Arizona. I loved my time in Arizona. And it was great for me to kind of get out of, I'm from the Northeast originally, so it was good to get out and spread my wings a bit. My wife and I moved out here, started a family. So it really changed all the dynamics for the better in my life.
So I don't know who else was you were considering as a free agent, but was there any discussion around like, if you had a checklist of things to go through when you're a free agent? I assume, especially in the NFL, given the career span, money's probably at the top.
Yeah.
But like, what else is on that list, and what went through your mind when making that decision?
Obviously, the ability to win would be huge. The taxes.
But the Cardinals weren't very good, right? So was it just like the money was so much better there than elsewhere?
Yeah, the money. There was a chance I was going to go to Indianapolis to the Colts.
Okay.
And I actually was sitting in the Arizona Cardinals facility, ready to sign the documents. And Chris Ballard called my agent and said, hey, is there any way? We just lost out on Ryan Jensen, who ended up going to Tampa Bay at the time. And said, is there any way we can still sign Justin? And we said, hey, we want Jensen's deal with the guarantees. I'm not visiting the Colts. If you want me, this is what it's going to cost. And this is the same year they hired Josh McDaniels, and also he left and went back to New England. So I think it was Chris Ballard at the time, 2017. Yeah, it was Chris Ballard. He's like, look, we just got embarrassed with this whole Josh McDaniels deal. If I sign you to a deal sight unseen, no physical, this could blow up in my face and I'm going to lose my job. So you have to come. You have to take a physical. I'm like, I'm in Steve Keim's office, the general manager of the Cardinals. We kicked Steve Keim out of his own office to call the Colts and try to get this deal done. And I'm like, you know what? A bird in the hand is better than not having one at all, whatever that saying is. So I ended up signing the deal with the Cardinals, but I almost was an Indianapolis Colt. They end up drafting Quentin Nelson, number 2 overall. I think it worked out well for both parties.
Yeah, so one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking there is the NFLPA. When it comes to the Players Association, is that something that you were super in tune with what they were doing throughout the year?
Yes, always in tune with the NFLPA. Zach Diassi, the former long snapper of the New York Giants, executive committee member of the PA, got me involved with the NFLPA, I think my second year in the league. So I've been a rep my entire career, joined the finance committee. I've sat on the health and wellness commission for the NFLPA and been super involved. The issue with the union is the turnover within the union. You're constantly trying to educate guys. We didn't have free agency until 1993. The reason the union was started was because we couldn't get our laundry done at the facilities. And it has come such a long way. But most people look at the union and they're like, oh, yeah, we get a Madden check from them. But everything else, like they don't do anything else for them. Not knowing that the NFL players, you are the union. So like I look at every player in the eyes right now. Get involved with the union. Make your voice heard. Be a voice in the locker room. There are so many benefits that are out there that you don't know exist. And I also look at players and say, hey, go to the NFL. use the NFL and the NFLPA as a partner. It's not the principal's office. You're not in trouble. You have to take command of your life, because there are things out there that can benefit a player once they're done that most guys don't know exist. And I was very fortunate to have guys like Zach Diassi take me under his wing and teach me about the NFL union.
How did the Madden checks work with the Players Association?
So it's now very famous with name, image, and likeness. The NFLPA on our behalf collectively bargains with our name, image, and likeness to go out and raise dollars. The bulk of those dollars come through the Madden check. So any licensing deals that we get goes into this pot and is split up amongst all the dues paying members of the NFL. So basically players pay their dues into the NFL and then they get a check back from the NFLPA. I'm sorry, this is all through NFLPA. The players' dues do not pay anyone's salary at the union. All of the union officials and employees are all paid through the for-profit arm. So the for-profit arm, NFL Inc., that's where we get our Madden check from. So there's this lump sum of money that's split up by the NFLPA selling our group licensing, and that's where we get that Madden check every year. And typically it's a 1-to-1. Maybe you make a little bit more money than you pay in dues, you make back in a Madden check. And that is how the union operates. And we have this war chest. It is over, I think it's close to $600 or $700 million at this point, that allows players in times of work stoppages to get things like insurance, to help, cut some checks to help guys keep their lights on. It won't ever cover like lifetime health care or things of that nature, but it's there to protect the players in times of work stoppages. And the players had to use it during the 2011 work stoppage, and they're lucky that it's there, and it's a very major benefit the players have.
When people ask me about some of the initiatives that Roger Goodell has floated over the years, which is like more international games, but also an 18-game schedule, I think it's probably, and I'm curious your opinion on this, I think it's probably a foregone conclusion at this point that the regular season will eventually expand to 18 games. And my thesis behind that is really simple. It's just that the Players Association works for all players, not just the highest paid players. And their job ultimately, in most cases, is to maximize earning potential for all the guys. And look, if you have to get something in return for that, I'm sure they'll do that. But ultimately, it's in their best interest to get players more money. And if you get, call it 40 to 50%, depending on what you want to include in the revenue sharing bucket, if you're getting 40 to 50% of that additional money to the players, that sounds like a positive. Is that kind of the right way you would think about it? So
I always try to shift players' mindset to the money. Everything we do is about the money. Like every rule that's made, follow the money. Why do we have a hip drop tackle? Because if we don't have our starting quarterbacks and running backs on the field, people don't want to tune into these games. Players, every dollar that someone spends on fantasy or gambling, we get 48.23% of all those dollars. When you see Amazon paying $150 million for a Black Friday deal, or Netflix paying however many hundreds of millions for the Christmas deal, it's because everyone wants to tune in and watch us. And we, as NFL players, at the very bottom line, I don't care how much you love the game, how much you love competition, you trade your health for money. That is the basic equation of the NFL. So from my perspective, let's make as much money as we can as fast as possible, because we know this game's fleeting. We know there's a 100% chance of injury. And when it comes to 18 games, if it makes sense monetarily and guys will put more money in their pockets, it makes more sense to play 18 games. We can talk about health and safety. We can talk about all those things. But if we really cared about health and safety, we shouldn't walk across the street. We shouldn't drive a car. We know the risks of playing football, and players sign up for it for money. And as long as the money is there and a player's willing to trade his health for those dollars, that is the basic understanding of the NFL. And I think even if you told ex-NFL players you would have these crazy symptoms for the rest of your life, most of them would still make that decision to play football because of everything else it brought them in their lives. This is real day, modern gladiator things that players love, and they wouldn't trade it for anything else on planet Earth. And I would argue a lot of times we would be worse off where we were previously if we had not found football. A lot of guys that play in our league do not come from well-off areas, do not have infrastructure within their families. And it sounds kind of mean to say this, but like we trade our health for money. That is the basic understanding of the NFL, in my opinion. And I'm sure people will get mad and tell me I'm wrong, but that's how I view it.
It feels like the NFL has also done, to their credit, tried to get a little bit better about it, right? If you think about some of the rules that have been implemented during the game, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. To your point, it probably is really just to keep players healthy, especially quarterbacks and people like that they want on the field for ratings. But they've also eliminated a lot of the stuff in the preseason where you're going to be hitting people. The Guardian caps have obviously become much more popular, and I believe are mandated now during practices for essentially all players outside of kickers and quarterbacks to wear. Some players are now wearing them in games. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is like people talk about the death of the NFL with concussions because, there's a lot more education and research around it today. And there certainly has been a drop in youth tackle football participation. But I think to your point, if there's millions of dollars on the line, a lot of people are still going to make that decision 10 times out of 10 to go play football because of the life that it can provide them. And what we've seen the NFL do is they've just shifted that, right? Where they say, hey, look, just go play flag football for the first 6 years of your life. And then when you get to high school, go play tackle then. And you eliminate essentially thousands of head hits or, head-to-head contact that you wouldn't have had previously. And to the point earlier around practice, like a lot of that has been eliminated too. Now that you're, out of the game and removed yourself a little bit, was this something that you thought about when you were playing, or is it more something you think about now?
It's something I more think about now. Like I have a daughter, eventually hopefully have a son one day. And I know my son's going to want to play football. And I think about what am I going to tell my son or what am I going to tell my nephew when he wants to play? I think about all the positives that being in a team sport does for an individual. I think there's a lot more harm by just sitting in your house and sitting in a bubble and not doing anything. There's concussions playing youth soccer. You can, like I said,
soccer is huge with concussions, the headers. But also the other fact of this, and sorry for cutting you off, is, most people aren't going pro. Like 99.9% of people aren't going to end up where you were, where you're going to have a 10-year career in the NFL.
No, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly, but even the fact that like just going to a university, getting a scholarship to Syracuse University, being immersed in the alumni network, leaving home. I probably don't go to a school like Syracuse unless I got a scholarship. So it's all those different things that have impacted my life. And it wasn't for football, I wouldn't have those. So yes, there is going to be prices to pay with your health. We are doing the best we can to limit that. But when you still go out there and play on football, or when you still go out there on Sundays to play football, you still are running risk of injury. You're still going to have ACLs, shoulders, neck injuries, back injuries. But I think the negatives, the positives greatly outweigh the negatives. And most players, I would say 99.9% of players would take playing the game and the consequences that come with it over saying they wish they stayed home and just played Madden all day long and sat on their couch. I think that guy might be worse off. The one that doesn't ever leave their house and doesn't enjoy life. There's a beauty of playing football, meeting guys from all different walks of life. Now we're in like a pro football, trying to sell the game. I am not to all the moms and dads out there, but truly anything where you can work as a team with people is worth it. And then when you get to the NFL and it becomes a business, let's maximize those dollars.
When you got drafted and you got your signing bonus, did it hit in one direct deposit?
It hit in one direct deposit.
That must be the most amazing feeling ever.
The Cardinals, different from the New York Giants. New York Giants direct deposit into your bank account. Arizona Cardinals cut you a physical check. So they don't give it to you all in one lump sum. They give it to you in like 3 payments. The Cardinals aren't like the richest cash team. And when I say cash rich, like the owner's main job is football. Like Jerry Jones has many other businesses and he has more ways than one where money comes into his accounts. The Cardinals give you your checks around like season ticket signups, the media money hitting their account and they pay the players, like different areas. So they give physical checks where the Giants give one lump sum direct payment into your bank account through wire. That was, it was crazy. I actually thought I got robbed because I never paid taxes in that amount before. And just be alert. Every NFL player is walking with about 50% of what the contract says.
After you're signing.
After taxes, after agents, after advisor fees. And that's where a lot of guys get themselves in trouble. They're banking on seeing that full contract come in, and they don't realize the taxes.
Well, and I'm sure there's I don't know the math on it, but I'm sure there's a percentage of people that, obviously don't get the full contract either. The NFL contracts aren't guaranteed. And even guaranteed money is like, oh, it's actually guaranteed the third year from today on this Tuesday. And if you're not on the team, then it's not guaranteed. And it's like, as a fan, you're like, wait, I thought they said guaranteed. And you're like, well, it's, there's some stipulations around that.
Guaranteed for injury, and if you have an injury, it's voided. There are a lot of ways out. It's not like baseball. Baseball is harder to get to those contracts, but once you get it, it's guaranteed and it's there. And that's why a lot of NFL players struggle because we used to only do 17-week pay periods as well. Now we have 36-week pay periods.
Did you flip to that when it went the other way?
Yeah, I loved it. The Tennessee Titans were the one team that throughout history have always done the 36-week pay period.
Yeah.
And I say 34. It was 17 weeks. We added a game plus the bye week. So now we're an 18-week schedule. And now we went to 36 weeks. It's much better because it gives players smaller checks, longer throughout the season. Then we have player performance bonuses that come out in like the summer months. So players used to go 3 or 4 months without any money. And that's where you would see like these loan sharks hitting players up on Instagram and Twitter and saying, hey, you want $100,000 for a 15, 20%, interest payment, and players would take it because they didn't have any money. And that was a scary time in the locker rooms.
Yeah, I'm happy they did that too. The Cardinals have their own team playing, don't they?
Yes.
Was there a big difference between that and flying with the Giants?
Good or bad? It was when I flew with the Giants, Tom Coughlin would sit right in the middle of all the players and he'd read a newspaper and no one talked. And on Arizona Cardinals, at one point, a player brought a DJ booth onto the plane and we had a DJ booth after the plane. So that just gives you the stark comparison of the two. The Arizona Cardinals used to have this Atlas airplane that was double decker. So the coaches sat on top, the players sat beneath. So the players and coaches were separate, and the coaches loved being up top. Players had their own, and it was the best camaraderie of any plane that I've ever been on. And I think Bidwell is starting a business where he's going to charter some more teams going forward. So I think that's
because he's a pilot, right? I don't think he's flying that plane, but he's a pilot, right?
No, he can fly those planes.
Oh, shit.
Now he can fly it with the other pilots that are on board, I'm pretty sure. But he flies his own helicopter. He's taking guys on tour. Like when you're a free agent for the Cardinals, he will fly you on a tour around Phoenix and show you the city.
Yeah, because I remember, I forget who it was, but they said when they signed up, or when they, when they signed a deal with the Cardinals, he came and picked them up.
Yeah,
in his plane.
Yeah, so Zach Ertz, I think, was one of the guys that he flew in, went and picked up, and then flew him around the helicopter. It's awesome. He loves his toys. Like he loves having the planes. I think he is building a fleet out for the NFL teams, and that is a brilliant business move by him because teams have to travel, and not all teams travel equally. I will tell you that much. And not all teams feed their players equally. Like there is things that the Cardinals have figured out to do on a travel standpoint, and they're doing it well.
I won't ask who the worst is, but who are the best teams at that? Or ones you've heard of?
I've heard San Francisco is great. I've heard the New York Jets are great. The one of the worst was New Orleans. New Orleans was terrible. The Commanders were terrible. Buffalo Bills, until Pagula got there, had a high school level gym that guys trained in. Like it was awful what they had to deal with. But it makes sense, right? Alabama had the best facilities because they weren't paying a quarterback $30 million a year. Now with NIL, it's becoming there's much more parity in college football. But now the NFL realizes like, all right, we have to get our standards up. This is a new business. Private equity's coming in. There's an infusion of cash.
Well, and the recruiting wasn't as hard in the NFL, right? Like to your point earlier, it's like who's offering me the most money? If the team isn't as good or if the facility isn't as good, like I'll just go train on my own, right? Like where's the money? In college football, that was always huge because you're not paying the quarterback, but also you got to go recruit kids and get them to come to your school. Whereas the NFL, it's a little bit different. Do you think, obviously you just mentioned the private equity stuff. Does that matter at all to players or no?
It should, because now the facilities will probably improve. The quality of life for players will improve. It's going to become a business. So maybe it will get a little leaner in some areas that might hurt the players, where some teams might spend more on massage therapists, acupuncture, all the extra things to get the players better. And private equity might come in and say, hey, look, we're not spending an extra $3 million a year on the players. Like, let's be as lean as possible. All the other teams aren't doing it. I think it's going to be a net positive. The owners, and I mentioned teams like the Cardinals, like the Cincinnati Bengals, who aren't flush with cash, that have owned these teams. Think about this. The Arizona Cardinals were bought for like $500 in 1925. It's nice to let the Bidwells have a liquidity event, because now they can roll that cash and reinvest in the team. I heard Mark Lazary speak, who was a former owner of the Milwaukee Bucks. He recently sold. When the Milwaukee Bucks were at their best, they were losing money every single year. It was an appreciation play to own a team. It is not a cash flow. You're going to live off that cash flow every single year. It is an appreciation play. And with private equity coming in, it gives these owners an opportunity to cash out on some of that appreciation, which is good for everybody.
Yeah, and people forget that sports always hasn't been this sexy asset class. Like it's most recently over the last decade or two. I remember hearing Mark Cuban speak a week or two ago, and he was just saying, "Look, when I bought the Dallas Mavericks, for the next 10 years, valuations were flat, and one team actually sold for less than I had purchased. And now, obviously, the team made a bunch of money, and he sold it for billions of dollars, or at least part of his stake. But it wasn't always that way. And to your point, if you look at owners across the league, Bidwell's one example, but the Bengals are another example, right? Like owners who aren't cash rich, who the team is their primary asset, you're not churning a bunch of profit each year. In a lot of cases, it's an appreciation game, and it puts you in a weird spot. Like people don't realize in the NFL, if you go give out a guaranteed contract like a Deshaun Watson deal, you have to go put that money in escrow for future, so the NFL and the player know that it's safe, because there were owners back in the day that wouldn't be able to pay out these deals. And the Bengals, like everyone's like, oh, they just paid Joe Burrow. Why wouldn't they go pay Jamar Chase? And it's like, well, the owner kind of had to commit a lot of cash to go pay Joe Burrow. So maybe he wants to wait another year until the latest possible, position he can to go put more cash in an escrow account for Jamar Chase. So there's a lot of dynamics at play there that I think private equity can help out with as well, where private equity can come in and say, we're going to buy 10% of the team or 5% of the team or whatever it ends up being. But in some cases, it's going to be tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, that the owners, whether majority or minority, are going to take off the table and use for either, personal cash for themselves or reinvesting back in the team.
It makes a ton of sense. And now there's these districts being built around NFL teams. So there's a real estate play, and there's the gambling component that comes into play. And Mark Cuban mentioned this in that, I think, that same interview, where he said, look, I don't know real estate. People stepped in and told me they could help me with this development around the stadium. He's like, I'm a tech guy. I had a competitive advantage, but now all these private equity and tech people are coming into the space. I felt like I lost that advantage. I don't know real estate. He's like, I was out. I don't want to deal with my kids having to inherit this team. And to be able to sell at that point is a brilliant move by Cuban. I mean, I'm sure in 20 years from now, we're going to see valuations of NBA teams, and he'd be like, I should have stayed in. But at this time, with where the leagues are at, I think it's a good time to make those types of moves, because it is forever changing. We are going to see an era of which the communities built around these stadiums will forever impact places like a Phoenix, places like Cincinnati, where you're going to have these crazy, redevelopments, multi-use, mixed-use developments being built around them that will be very impactful, will change the communities, and it's going to have this, living, eat, live, play type atmosphere, and that's good for the game.
Yeah, I forget, someone's gonna quote me on being wrong on this, but I think the Braves in Atlanta, so the Atlanta Braves, they used to play in downtown, and now they moved outside of the city to Cobb County, and they built this mixed use development outside of the stadium called the Battery, and I think it's their third largest revenue generating category now. So it's behind TV money and tickets, and then it's the third largest. So they do more than sponsorships. They do more than everything else in the mixed-use development. And all they're really doing is renting out the buildings. They just own the real estate, built it, and then rent it out. It's an amazing business model, and it gets a ton of people out there on game days, enhances the fan experience, gets people to spend more money at the games, attend games, et cetera. So I think that's a really fascinating point by you, and something that we're clearly going to see, because if Mark Cuban is selling essentially 75% of his stake, because I think he still has about 25 to 30% of the team today, he's doing it because he's bringing in a partner that he thinks could ultimately make the team worth more by adding a casino or whatever it is in Texas. Now, it's not approved yet in Texas, so that certainly still has to happen, but they're on their way.
The wave is coming. I think the wave has gotten too big. That's only a matter of time.
Well, every state is looking for more tax money, and I think gambling and casinos have certainly proven to be a good category to do that. So my guess is Cuban probably has some inside information, or the Adelsons who bought the team have some inside information that's probably coming soon. But
100%.
You mentioned real estate. I know you invest in real estate, and you started doing some of that while you were playing. How did you get into that?
COVID, as bad as it was for the world, was one of the best things that happened to me, besides getting out of New York and signing with the Cardinals and having to kind of set up on my own outside of family and friends. When COVID hit, the Cardinals came to me and said, hey, look, you're a starter. You're one of our better players. You're not in that upper echelon. You're not an all-pro. You're not a Pro Bowler. You're going to have to take a pay cut. And they cut me 33% of what I was making. And I said, screw you guys. I'm retiring. I always said if I had to play I never had to face any adversity while playing in terms of my contract situation. I got a scholarship to Syracuse, go to Syracuse, get drafted in the first round. Of course, I'm going to go play. Arizona Cardinals pay me maybe one of the highest paid guards in football. Of course, I'm going to do it. As soon as they cut me down to like what guys I viewed I was much better than were making, I said, this isn't fair. And
But
life's
but
not
why
fair.
did you accept that?
COVID hit. We went and explored other opportunities. And like my only other opportunity was the New England Patriots with Bill Belichick and Mac Jones. Not even Tom Brady Patriots, where it's like you go there for a year, you hate your life more than anything, but you win a Super Bowl and you go get paid elsewhere. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to New England. I live here in Arizona. And that year,
Plus, with COVID, you have to move and do all that stuff. Yeah.
exactly. And in that year, I said, you know what? I need to figure out what I want to do post-career. And that's when I found real estate. I had bought a 3-acre piece of property that my wife and I were going to build a forever home. COVID hit. Everyone from California moved to Arizona. We ended up selling it, doing a 1031 exchange and we tried to do a townhome community. I was going to try to build it myself. But just like Mark Cuban mentioned, I'm a football player and it proved to be too much. Found a developer in town. He bought it. I did a 1031 exchange out of it. And he said, hey, do you want to come work for our company in the off seasons and see how we do what we do? And that's how I spent the last 4 years. And I've learned from a guy that's been doing it for 30 years, and I've learned a ton. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do real estate, despite what Mark Cuban had said. Maybe to do deals like on that level, yes. But to do smaller deals, it's a great way to establish cash flow. And that's the issue that most players run into once they're done. There's two. They don't have purpose and they don't have the money to pursue purpose. And that is something that I'm looking forward to doing post-career, is helping players on that front as well. So I'm doing a program with NYU and the NFL this upcoming March where we're going to bring in 30 NFL players and start to work on building not only your brand, but building your network, building a mentorship program, which was so influential for me. So I'm basically taking my playbook that I learned just through trial and error and hopefully passing it on to some other players.
Yeah, and I think part of the point there too is the checks stop coming, right? So like you go from making a ton of money to essentially no money unless you have cash producing assets set up like you do with real estate.
And most players do not have that. They're used to making so much money and their lifestyle jumps up. And this is like anybody. Everyone slowly makes more money and their lifestyle slowly works up. In the NFL, you go from 0 to 100. Your lifestyle jumps up. Money then goes back to 0, but you still have this lifestyle. That is where most guys get in trouble and they go broke because they're supporting family that they probably shouldn't be. They have an agent, they have an advisor, they have an assistant, every person under the book is taking their fee, and it's hard to get out of that lifestyle once you're done, and that's where guys get in trouble.
Yeah. So I've been seeing a bunch of your content stuff too. You're obviously doing more things on the media side, but you're taking a slightly different approach, I think, from rather than just going, to a studio show or going to do a radio hit or something like that. You're doing a lot of content on your own on YouTube. You're going to every Thursday night football game, which is challenging in its own right, logistically, physically, mentally,
health-wise, yeah.
Health-wise, et cetera. Why are you choosing to do that?
So I'm not a household name. I'm not Jason Kelsey. I'm not Andrew Whitworth, guys that just like walked off the field into the booth and got great jobs. I've decided that I have to get into the trenches. I have to get dirty. I have to outwork. I went and got invited to not that those guys didn't do that. They just had a bigger name throughout their careers, fortunately for them. I went to the broadcast boot camp. The NFL puts this event on every year. And people are like, hey, we love what you can do. Your name just isn't quite there yet. Just keep working at it. So I said, all right, let me take this on my own and figure out a way to make this happen. And I've always been interested in the fan dynamic and the dollars they spend and how it matriculates to the players and to the game. Like, let me go directly to the fans and make them the star of the show and almost be like a Robin Hood to the fans. Like I've been in the NFL. I've sat in I've just got to sit in those seats. Now let me come sit with the fans and go into the parking lots and go into the tailgates and cheer and really feel what it's like to eat, live, breathe football with these diehard super fans. And that's exactly what I've been doing. Got a little sick in Atlanta, so I missed Seattle last week. We're back for New Orleans this week. And it's been a very fulfilling adventure. And now all of a sudden the agents that told me, I can't sign you right now because your name's not big enough, they're hitting me back up saying, hey, I want to sign you to our roster. We didn't have a sponsor and we still don't have a sponsor. But now all of a sudden I got a few sponsors for a few shows and working through that aspect. So I'm getting it out of the mud, so to speak. And it's very similar to my NFL career.
Yeah.
Or my college career, I should say. I was a 2-star and now all of a sudden people are showing some interest.
Well, I was going to say too, one, it's seems to be working because I see the YouTube numbers and they're trending in the right direction and getting a lot of views. So it seems like people are enjoying the content. But two, I have a feeling you're gonna find out that maybe the broadcast stuff isn't necessarily what you want to do, if that makes sense. Because like once you start doing it on your own, I think you're gonna have more fun for sure. But then economically and financially, you're gonna look at it, you're gonna say, unless I'm doing like that top of the line type work that like, okay, if you get the job Jason Kelsey got, like, sure, no brainer. No one's going to go on YouTube to do that. Right. So
Exactly.
like, I get that. But otherwise, if you're like a mid-tier kind of like broadcast booth guy, you're probably going to be better off doing it on your own because it's going to be an audience that you own, an audience that you're going to be able to monetize in other ways with events and shows and different things like that. So I think it's probably a smart decision by you.
Well, you've seen that, controlling your narrative, owning your audience, having that really core engagement from your fans. Like, you have a loyal fan base that loves what you do. So, I have followed you from the beginning. I'm part of that cult. So it's good to see and to feel that fulfillment on the back end. Like when you get comments, and I'm sure you feel that when you personally interact with people that follow you and know your story, it is much more fulfilling than kind of going through this third party process.
Yeah, for sure. Is that something that you think more people should be focused on while they're playing? Like I always talk about, everyone uses the NFL, right? And then they don't think about it in the reverse of like, if you're a football player and, you're there you play 5 years in the NFL, like it sounds harsh to say, but those are the most popular years of your life, which is why I think a lot of people struggle when they leave of like, oh, this person won't take my call. This person won't do this. These people were actually fans of the team, not necessarily of me. Whereas if they did content while they were playing, while some fans will make fun of you, it's also extremely beneficial for anything you want to do after players.
I would say, yes, they should be thinking about it. Now, I think you should have your own show, be producing your own content, let that get in the way of playing. There's a fine line there. It depends how good of a player you are. If you're the 40 to 53rd guy on the roster and you don't have a solidified spot, I would focus on, you probably are better off investing more energy into playing. But as you start seeing your careers coming maybe towards an end, I look at a guy, and this is no knock whatsoever because he crushes it, Isaac Rochelle. When he wasn't on a team, he was starting to create content. I think he's the perfect example of now he's probably making more money doing content than he was playing football.
Yeah.
And he didn't let the content get in way of his job. And that was a great role for him to take on. I've seen other guys that let the content kind of surpass their production on the field, and those guys end up losing their job playing football. So I would say, yes, early on, focus on football. Let's make sure you have a starting job. But once you're a guy like a Marlon Humphreys and you can start to establish yourself and you have that credibility and you're producing while doing it, I would say 100% use the NFL. It's part of the reason why I went back to the New York Giants last year. There was teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, the New Orleans Saints that were actually in better shape from a playoff perspective. But I knew going back to the New York Giants, if I wanted to do real estate and I wanted to do media, playing for the New York Giants provides a social equity that no other team could provide for me. And it's part of the reason why I went back there. And it's part of what has been the springboard to what I'm doing now. So it should be on the minds of every player because
was the whole straight off the couch thing like part of this whole, I assume that was intentional to some degree to make more noise around the signing?
It actually was more of, they told me I had to do my Sunday. I didn't sign there thinking that I was going to have to say that on air. I didn't even cross my mind. It was planned to go back to the New York Giants to get my name back out there. Part of my plan was like, I'm going to handle the media for the offensive line. I'm going to bring the offensive line together and build camaraderie, do O-line dinners every Thursday night, and like do the things that I know like off the field wise can make a team better. I also had a plan to fight Dexter Lawrence the first day of practice, which I actually aborted mission on because he's a beast. And I'm like, I value my life too much. But like, I wanted to provide like the O-line is not the punching bag on the team. The O-line runs this team, but in New York, the D-line runs that team still. The O-line's coming back around, and then the third was to be able to go out and leverage the New York Giants and the ecosystem of the New York Giant fan base because, like you said, you're a fan. Every CEO in every building in New York City is either a Jets or Giants fan, and for the most part, it's Giants. So I was able to leverage that network.
Yeah, it's certainly a good team to be kind of an alumni of for sure. Well, Justin, thanks so much for doing this. Where can people go learn more about what you're doing on the media side and follow your content?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Justin Pugh 67. That is the best place to get all your news. My YouTube channel, it's Net Worth with Justin Pugh. I post about it on my Twitter or my X account. So if you follow me there, you will get all the up-to-date information. And on the business side, LinkedIn. It is a superpowered machine and tool that I didn't use previously. Just find my name on there.
LinkedIn is very underrated. I second that. LinkedIn is like my fastest growing platform, and I get more inbounds on LinkedIn than anywhere else.
It's where business folks go to operate. So it's not just that visceral, that negativity that we get on Twitter all the time. It's actually like, oh, let's be productive. Let's go to LinkedIn.
Yeah, don't check the feed too much because there's some cringe going on. But outside of that, if you can stomach it, it's a good spot to be.
Exactly.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.